Welcome to another episode of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, your home for the latest news and analysis from the world of college hoops. Back again are your hosts, Josh Burton, Phil Dexter, and Peyton Burton.
Back at it like a crack addict. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 133. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton. Joining me today are a pair of my teammates, Peyton Burton, Corey Gardner, and both of you gentlemen are in a lot better mood than I am.
Oh, man, it was a great Saturday. Absolutely loved it.
Oh, yeah. Great Saturday for me. Got to see Kansas' 3-game losing streak come to an end, and we ended another streak heading into Saturday. So, got some big games coming up this week. And, yeah, I know me and Corey were in a good mood. Josh, what about you? Why are you so mad?
There's multiple reasons. We will get into the first cause here in just shortly. The second one is I woke up at 6:30 a.m. this Sunday to watch AC Milan, only to continue to get embarrassed by a team that hasn't won a game since mid-October, and we gave up 5 goals, and I have no idea what's happened to the reigning champions of Italy. But, yeah, I'm a little cranky and tired and all that, but we're going to make it a good show. We're going to be fun like normal. We'll get over the Milan talk, save that for another day. But what I will mention, as always, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in part with the House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more information. Speaking of, I was a guest on the House of College Hoops podcast last Thursday evening. I think it was episode 7 for them. It's the most recent one. I was joined by co-founder Jake Zimmer and Sam Basil. Great talk. Good guys, man. I appreciate the invite. Go give that a listen if you have not yet. It's just search up House of College Hoops. You'll find it in all your streaming feeds. Also, Peyton, got to shout out our title sponsor of Everything College Basketball this year, Beauty to Beast Nutrition, located in downtown Edinburgh, Indiana. It is a healthy juice bar. I just stopped in the other day, seen the owner, Natasha, picked up myself one of those beautiful tasting smoothies. It's called the Grave Digger. Plus, I got a shot of protein in there to give me a little boost before Corey and I hit the gym that evening on Friday. Good stuff, man. If you stop in and tell them ECB sent you, get 10% off your entire purchase, no matter the drink limit, 1, 2, 5. You tell them ECB sent you, get 10% off that entire purchase. I'm telling you right now, we've been saying it all year. If you are in Edinburgh or you passing through Edinburgh, Indiana, Central Indiana, stop in, make it a point of contention, healthy, a skinny shot tea, a protein coffee, a healthy smoothie, because they are delicious. They are so good, and they are good for you. Good people. Make sure you stop in if you get the opportunity. Before we kind of get into the Big 12 SEC Challenge from this last Saturday, anything else on the docket you guys want to talk about at the top of the show before we get into anything? How about the Royal Rumble? We talked about it off air. Shout out our friends. You'll hear the ad here in a little bit for Everything Pro Wrestling. But Peyton, the Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view of the year. We were talking about it off air, and it delivered again last night in San Antonio.
I still need to go back and watch the men's rumble. Obviously, I was watching the Kansas and Kentucky game last night, so a majority of that got my attention. Didn't keep up with the first half of the Royal Rumble. But I did get to watch the second half after the Kansas game was over. And, yeah, a lot of fun. A fun show. Rhea Ripley won the women's rumble. She went from number 1 to number 30. She's one of the few people, I think 4 people total that's done that before, to go from number 1 and win the rumble. Incredible accomplishment from her. We all expected her to probably win it, and I think she tweaked her knee beginning of the match.
She dislocated it and popped it back in.
And it popped it back in, still finished the match. She's a tough son of a bitch. And that ending to the Rumble, man, like I went back and watched some of the clips. One of the loudest pops you ever hear in your life. And incredible, the storytelling, some of the best storytelling they've done, especially in the last decade, maybe of all time. Beautiful, mwah, chef's kiss.
Yeah, you see in the live chat, as we always are, we are on the YouTube, the Facebook, and the Twitter live right now for episode 131. You see our friend of the show, Connor McCabe, says Big 12, baby, best conference of college basketball. He's not going to get any disagreements with me there because we've said it all season long so far. Corey, anything before we dive headfirst in this Big 12 SEC Challenge? Anything of note happened over the weekend you want to discuss? Anything good?
I just wanted to say that, Peyton should be really, really happy because Louisville also broke a streak of 20-point losses. So they actually kept one game, remotely close to the second worst team in the ACC. So, shout out to them also, to start the show off. So Peyton should be really thrilled.
Yeah, Peyton, Louisville, trying to set records here.
No comment from me. Let's move on.
Yeah.
Sub 300, baby.
Let's go ahead and just dive in. Let's start. It was the big one that we all hyped up. And I know rankings-wise, the Tennessee-Texas game was the biggest game. We will get into that. But for every other metric, win streak versus losing streak, name value, though, number 1 versus number 2 all-time wins in Rupp Arena. Let's just dive into Kansas, Kentucky, because to us, that was the big one of the docket on the challenge. And, man, Rupp Arena was electric last night. It was the best Rupp Arena environment in maybe a decade. The fans showed up early. They showed out. The student section was great. Got to give a shout out to our friend of the show and ECB Top 25 poll voter, Matt Sack. He's been leading the charge in the student section all year, and he had a great sign. He said he had one that said UK Sack is better than KU's Dick, which was great. That's a tier 1 sign. But Rupp Arena was great, man. They feel the energy coming back in the program. Winners of 4 in a row heading into last night. The energy was there. They want to believe. And Kentucky, to start this game, came out like a ball of fire. Kansas absolutely could not handle Kentucky pushing the basketball, getting to the rim and downhill. Chris Livingston had 8 points in the first half. I think he got all of them in the first 10 minutes. You had Kason Wallace was doing good. But eventually, Kansas settles down. They go to the same play that has killed Kentucky all year with a ball screen, but they changed the location of it. Sometimes it's a high ball screen, then they went a middle ball screen, and then they went a side ball screen. And a lot of credits needed to Jalen Wilson, DeJuan Harris running those ball screens. You got production actually out of your bigs and KJ Adams on the lobs, doing well. Kansas, probably the key to this game, the two in my mind, were Kansas did a tremendous job keeping the nation's best offensive rebounding team off the glass. They out-rebounded them. They actually had more offensive rebounds in this ball game than Kentucky did. Did a great job controlling the backboard, and they hit the big shots when Kentucky didn't. We're going to talk all about Jalen Wilson's just clutch shooting. We're going to talk about McCullough throwing shit in because I think, honestly, that's what he did. He threw shit in, but nonetheless, it counts the same. KJ Adams, 17 in this game. Peyton, just the overall, before we really dive in, the overall thoughts on this game last night from both perspectives.
Fun game. It was a hell of an atmosphere. Hats off to BBN. They definitely showed out. One of the best atmospheres that you've seen in the last 5 years for this Kentucky team. And everything you said was correct. Kentucky started off strong. They went up 9-4. Kansas was struggling, especially with Kentucky's size down low. Couldn't really stop Oscar. Jacob Toppin started off the game pretty hot. Had a couple, I think he had like 6 points in the first couple of buckets made. Played very well. But once Kansas started to settle down, hats off to DeJuan Harris. In the last 3-4 games, he has not played well. He hasn't shot the ball well. Well, he had 2 back-to-back threes at one point, and he had 8 assists in this game. He had 8 points, 8 assists, 1 rebound, 2 turnovers, but that was early in the game. Kind of driving to the lane, just threw it away. Not very smart on his part. But he really took care of the ball majority of the game, and I thought he played well. And Kevin McCullough, Jalen Wilson was the best player on the floor. Kevin McCullough, we don't win this game without him. I mean, he had a double-double, 11 points, 12 rebounds. Defensively, he was great. Listen to this stat. 12 rebounds. Oscar Tshiebwe had 9. He out-rebounded one that, in my eyes, the best rebounder I've ever seen, period. In college basketball, it's just basketball, period. And he out-rebounded him 12-9, and he's a guard. Hell of a display by Kevin McCullough. And the offensive rebounding that Kentucky only had 2 offensive rebounds. That was the key. And we held them off the glass, and we ended up winning the game. Hats off to Kentucky, though, because that atmosphere was incredible.
Corey, and early on, you could tell that Kansas's game plan was to double down on Oscar every time he caught the ball. But Oscar was kicking the ball out. He ended up in this game with, he had 4 assists and probably could have had a few more if a guy like CJ Frederick would have hit some shots. Every time Kansas ran a double team down, Oscar was making them pay. And that was during the early part when Kentucky was out and running and really kind of in control of the game early. Kind of thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, Kansas came in. I mean, what they had as a game plan early on wasn't really working. You kind of mentioned it. Kentucky was doing or was kind of doing things at will. But Bill Self, you can never take him out. Great coach, made great adjustments, and Kansas adjusted and finally started to figure it out. And Kentucky just didn't have anything to change back after that. And you kind of mentioned it. Things that Kentucky had struggled with early on came back to kind of bite them. They had kind of put that new lineup together, kind of put some different things in action, and Kansas still took advantage and was there to exploit it.
So let's go ahead and get the negative out of the way. And I want to preface this with Kansas absolutely, at the end of the day, deserved this win, because you look at Kentucky, they lose by 9. The final score was 77-68. Kentucky missed 7 free throws. Now, I know you're saying, like, well, if you hit all of them, you still only lose by 2. But the flow of the game is different because those misses came early in the first half. You hit them free throws early. Now, instead of being up 3 or 4, maybe you're up 10. That's a little harder mountain to climb back from. But the negative side, because Kansas did play very well, the two things that just frustrated the dog shit out of me last night were fouls on both ends. Refereeing is a disaster in college basketball this year. Again, Kansas had more fouls than Kentucky. But you also got to look, too, Kentucky was attacking the rim at a crazy rate in the second half. That's where Kansas picked up most of their fouls. But there could have been more called on both ends of the floor. There could have been more. Like, there's no consistency in college basketball. I've got a picture on my phone from Twitter where they gave credit to Kevin McCullough on a steal because he doubled weak side. But the picture in the still frame is clearly him running through and grabbing Oscar's arm. And they say it's a play on. Oscar got mugged last night. He got mugged. And he still put up numbers. He ended up the game with 18 points, 9 rebounds. If they called half the fouls that he actually got fouled on, we're talking about a typical Oscar night. He got absolutely mugged. On the Kansas, right here's the picture if you're watching live on the YouTube and the Twitter and the Facebook. Look at that. If you zoom in on that, McCullough's arm is literally wrapping Oscar's arm. I think Peyton's trying to zoom in now. That is a foul all day, every day, twice on Sunday. But they don't call it. Just because Oscar's big doesn't mean he does not deserve to get a foul call. So they mugged Oscar all game long. Also, if we're talking about going against Kentucky, late in the game when they kept trying to get it close, I think they'd got it down to 3 or 4 points. Jalen Wilson goes in an ISO on the weak side, ball side, and backs top and down. Okay, great post position, great back down by Wilson, but he lowers his shoulder and knocks top and back 13 feet almost. And instead of an offensive charge, which it is historically in college basketball the last couple of years, been 99% of the time, they gave a defensive block charge to Jacob Toppin. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And then also on the Kansas end, like I said, I'm going to be fair here because a lot of times, especially in the second half, Kansas guards would drive on stuff and we hands on and nothing was called. College basketball reffing, and I put it on our Facebook group, and I never thought I would say this, and people could be upset with me, and that's fine. But I'm to the point where I'm so done with them because they are arrogant. They dictate the game far too much. And I'm to the point where let's go minor league baseball, what they're installing in the minor leagues, whereas automatic refereeing, auto umps, robots, whatever you want to call them, artificial intelligence, and let's get the correct call every time. I'm just tired of them. And I know it sounds bad because we're going to have actual humans lose their jobs. But damn it, there is enough bad right now that is clouding the good. And they don't have to be held accountable. And I'm sick and tired of it dictating games. Would Kansas still win this game if all them fouls were called? Probably, because, again, they hit shots when it mattered. But who knows if you call the fouls correctly, and now certain people are in foul trouble, or you get other free throw attempts, or whatever the case may be, who knows how this game turns out? But I know that the officials are terrible in college basketball this year. And before I kind of talk about any other things that I thought Kansas got a little lucky on, they had every bounce go their way, it seemed like. And I'll give examples. I just want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. I know I ranted and raved, but I want to hear your thoughts on that, honestly.
One thing I will agree with you on is the whole Oscar getting mugged situation. Wasn't just the Kansas game. It's been all season long that he's been getting mugged and the refs just won't call anything. Like, why are we punishing guys for being big? Why are we punishing guys who are inside forces just because they're a tank and they're big as fuck and they're strong and they could probably take the punishment down low? That doesn't mean they're exempt from getting fouls called on them. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, there's definitely some possessions down low where Oscar was getting double teamed by Jalen Wilson and KJ Adams, and Jalen Wilson was just hacking at his arm, and Kevin McCullough would do the exact same thing and just beating him up down low because we had to, because we're undersized. That's what we got to do to win. Happened in the Tennessee game. Plosvik was doing the same thing to Oscar Tshiebwe. Sakai Ziegler was doing the same thing to Oscar Tshiebwe. It's happened all season long. But one thing I will say about the fouls, like if you're going to talk about that, about Oscar getting mugged, let's talk about all the times in this game where Oscar, every time he'd get a post down low, he would hook KJ Adams, and that's not a foul. How is that not a foul call? Every single time. He hooked KJ Adams at one point and knocked his ass on the ground. How is that not a foul either? It goes both ways.
No, and I completely agree. That's what I said. I completely agree. Like, Kentucky guards fouled, especially in the second half, fouled Kansas guards a lot of the time that was not called. But my whole contention is the refs just let it go, and then they want to call the tackiest shit. Peyton, I think you even texted in the group that foul on Jacob Toppin on the back down was absolute bullshit. It was terrible.
Yeah, I said it was a bad call.
Awful. Corey, I want to hear your stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, there's just so many calls that just have make no sense. And it's like they put in the flopping rule this year, and I swear, like they still are afraid to call it, or they get away with so many things. And it's like, I mean, I know you guys are talking about the Kansas-Kentucky game, but it was like the Indiana-Ohio State game. Bryce Thompson's doing a simple back down, never lowered his shoulder, never did a single thing, and Ohio State defender falls over. It's offensive foul. Same exact thing. Malik Reno is getting back down. He falls over, and they call an offensive foul without any kind of lowering the shoulder, nothing. I mean, it's like there's just no answer to what these refs are calling. And it's like, I didn't know that fans are paying all this money to go to a game just to watch the Zebras blow a whistle. It's like they forgot what the game's actually about, and it's horrible.
And on the flopping call, that's such a dumb rule that they implemented this year, because anytime they call it, they rarely do call it this year. I haven't seen them call it a lot this year, but even when they do, like, how are you going to justify what's a flop and what's not a flop? Like, in this game specifically, Grady Dick had a wide open layup. He's in transition, and I don't know if it was Antonio Reeves or CJ Frederick was trying to take a charge and then completely fell back. Barely any contact. Like, if you're gonna put the flop rule in, isn't that not a flop? I mean, come on now. It's a stupid rule. Should not be in the fucking rule book at all. But if it's gonna be a rule, at least call it.
Yeah, no, you're right. It was Reeves getting back in transition, and I do want to talk about, again, Kansas hit the shots that mattered. Like, they hit the ones that mattered. They kept Kentucky at a base the whole game. They would keep them about 5 or 6 points. Kentucky would get it down to 3. Kansas would put it back to 6. It was like that the whole second half, it felt like. So credit to Kansas, man. They made the adjustments. We talked about it, the going to the higher mid or side ball screens, locking in defensively. They locked the paint up. Kentucky shooters were absolutely cold because they focused on making them run off the line, and if they had a shot, it was contested. CJ Frederick, I've never seen a guy who we know is a great shooter miss so many open shots. I've never in my life. And he is a good shooter, but he missed so many open shots in this game and the previous games. It's you wonder what the hell is going on. If he ever gets hot, I'd still say watch out. But Kansas did what they had to do. And the reason I said that, you can tell that they had some lucky stuff, but this is what happens too when you have a little momentum on your side. Go back to a couple of those plays where the one where Kason Wallace was clearing a defensive rebound, and I think it was Uday smacks the ball out of his hands that goes straight to Kansas for a layup. That would have changed the course of the game there, because Kentucky gets a stop. They go down and potentially time up. Uday sticks his hand out, knocks it free right to a wide. I think it might have been McCullough for a wide open layup. or the time McCullough Kentucky locked in defensively. Great defense for the whole entire shot clock. McCullough just turns, fires, hits a shot that he probably doesn't hit 90% of the time. Jalen Wilson, we know how great he's been, but he hits a dagger late as well where he's going off to the corner, shot clock's running down. He just catches, barely gets off the ground. They call it a 2 because that's the one when his foot was on line. Barely gets off the ground, high points the shot, and nothing but net. Didn't even get a full shot off. It's like he just threw it up and it goes in. So Kansas had some very fortunate bounces go their way last night. But at the end of the day, they made the right adjustments. Wilson looked like an All-American. He looked like a potential National Player of the Year last night. And you got production from DeJuan Harris. KJ Adams was great in this game. Kevin McCullough did what he needed to do. And Kansas comes out with the win. So I do want to give Kansas a lot of credit in this game. But I needed to present those arguments because the reffing was terrible both ends of the floor. Super inconsistent, as it has been all year. Kentucky hits free throws. This is a different ballgame. Kentucky does not hit the shots. Kansas gets all the bounces go their way. It was just one of those perfect storms last night. And Kansas found a way to leave Rupp Arena with a 9-point win. I do want to ask, though, you hear it now, field of 68, just because Kentucky loses this game. Oh, well, we don't even know if Kentucky's a tournament team now. Does that look like a team that shouldn't be in the NCAA tournament last night? Everything goes wrong for about 30 minutes of this game, and you still have a chance to win it. Does that look like a team that should not be in the NCAA tournament?
No, I think they should be in it. They played like that. I mean, how they jumped us early, got up to a 9-4 lead, and they led majority of the beginning of the first half. Kentucky's last lead was 22-21 with under 10 minutes to go, and that's the last time they led the game. Kansas took the lead and just never looked back from that point on. I still think they're a tournament team. They got to figure out some shit offensively. I was very impressed with how well they played. Oscar Tshiebwe, let me talk about him real quick, because there's some stuff. I did some research about Kentucky just about an hour ago before we started the show and getting everything ready about that three-point shooting. I'll get into that in a minute, but let me talk about Oscar. I talked about it Sunday. I talked about it Thursday. Why the fuck does Oscar not touch the ball every single possession down the floor? There were times, and that's not always on Coach Cal. Is it somewhat you can blame on Coach Cal for not getting him the ball? Yes, but to play devil's advocate, he ran some cross screens, some plays to get Oscar open, and he was wide open, but Jacob Toppin or CJ Frederick would not give him the ball. There was a play down low where they were in some type of cross screen. Oscar was wide open down the low block. Jacob Toppin literally looked at him, and instead of dropping him down low, because I think Jalen Wilson was on him, that's a mismatch, he tries to throw a cross-court pass and gets picked off by Grady Dick. That's basketball IQ. That's not all talent. That's not three-point shooting. No, that's not coaching. That's all basketball IQ. You got to make the smart play. Jalen Wilson was the best player on the floor. The best player on the floor. But there's no question Oscar Tshiebwe was the most dominant player on the floor. Yeah. And when you have him on the floor, get him the fucking ball. Every possession.
And he was scoring just about every possession or kicking it out, too, is the crazy thing.
When you made you run, there was a lot of leads because you was giving him the ball down low, and he'd make him move and go up with a layup.
And at some point, CJ Frederick's got to hit 2 points, 1 of 3 from the field, 0 of 5 from 3. Kentucky only shot 2 of 13 from three-point line, which is not great. Obviously, that's 15%. That's not good. And they've been shooting a higher volume of them, so I don't know if Cal got scared. Plus, some of the lineups were awkward at times last night where we had Lance Ware in with Toppin, and I just with Oscar, I know the conventional wisdom says 2 fouls, got to set him for a while. I think in a game like that, you got to trust him and play him. He only ended up with 3 fouls. And I do want to give a little love before we move on to Kason Wallace, 14 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 block, 5 steals to only 2 turnovers. Kason Wallace was tremendous last night. I thought he was as good as it got last night for Kentucky in this ball game. And then also on the Kansas end, Grady Dick had a quiet game in terms of scoring, 13 points, only 1 3. That 3 came at a huge time because, again, Kentucky had closed the gap. Grady got the ball, shot fake Kason Wallace, who went flying to try to block it, one sidestep, buried a three. I thought he was solid enough last night, and he showed some signs of life again after kind of struggling. So, I mean, somebody had to win, somebody had to lose this game. Kansas stops their streak, comes in, gets a win at Rupp. See if that fires them back up for the rest of the year. Kentucky, they can't let this loss turn into more. They've got 7 on the year. So, I mean, it's obviously dangerous time. But they got Ole Miss coming up on the road. Got to get a win there and see if you can't put another streak together until Tennessee comes back to Rupp. I think what's the win total margin at the end of the year? Do you think Kentucky needs at least 21 wins to get in the tournament safely?
Corey, go ahead. I gotta look at the schedule.
I'd say right around the 19 to 20 wins. I think would get them in safely. I think, in my opinion. I mean, they are still playing the SEC. I think they're going to pick up some wins. The overall, I mean, I think it'll be right around 19 to 20 wins. Will get them in. They may be in a playing game, but I think that'll at least get them in the field of 68.
Right now, looking on KenPom, they have Kentucky finishing 19-12 on KenPom. That's what KenPom's record for Kentucky. They haven't finished 19-12. And look at their remaining schedule. I mean, they do got that Tennessee game in Rupp Arena. Definitely can get, if you could sweep Tennessee this year, that's another marquee win for them. Be a huge momentum boost for them. I think that alone would get them in the tournament. But you got to play Arkansas twice, which Arkansas has not been playing well here lately. To be fair, I mean, Florida, Auburn was ranked. They were top 15 this week, but they lost. Haven't been the Auburn team that we expected coming to this year. There's not really, and once you get an SE tournament, obviously, if you play like Bama or something, you have another chance to get a high-quality win. But there's not many high-quality wins left for Kentucky on their schedule. So I think they got to get 20 wins plus to get into the tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some very tough ones. I know Ole Miss is struggling, but you got to go down there. You got to get a win. Florida next Saturday at home. You never know with Florida with Colin Castleton. Looking at their schedule as far as KenPom goes, of the regular season, they have 6 remaining games against top 50 KenPom teams. You get Florida at home, Arkansas at home. You've got Tennessee at home. Then you got to go at Florida, home against Auburn, away against Arkansas. You got to take care of the home games there. But it's going to be interesting. I still think Kentucky's a tournament team, especially with the bubble being absolute dog shit this year. I think Kentucky, as long as they don't completely, again, collapse down the stretch, I think that they win enough games, get in the tournament, and you never know. All you got to do this year is get in the tournament. And by the way, you want to know how great Kansas was on controlling the backboard? Kentucky dropped to number 6 in offensive rebounds now. They were getting about 40% of their offensive rebounds, leading the nation. They're now 6, getting 37.7%. That's a big drop for one game. That's how great Kansas did on the backboard.
That's ridiculous. And before we move on to another game, a real quick note on Kentucky, because I was talking about my research that I did. And, we talked about three-point rating. He was making fun of Tyler Hansborough for saying that Kentucky can't hit shots and they don't consistently hit shots, even though they should shoot 37% from the three-point line this year. And in a way, he's definitely wrong. But I think there's some truth. He holds a little bit of weight in what he's saying. It's just, in big games, listen to this stat, and this is my research only. In big games so far this year, Kentucky's three-point percentage against Michigan State, they shot 28%, 7-25. They lost that game. 24% against Gonzaga, lost that game, 6-25. 60% against Michigan, really good. Guess what? They won that game. 25% against Alabama, 5-20, lost. 31%, 5-16 for Tennessee. They won, but Tennessee didn't really play that well. And then today, or last night, 16% or 15%, 2-13 against Kansas, and they lost that game. In big games, Kentucky does not shoot the ball well from 3. And it's not just C.J. Frederick, it's not just Antonio Reeves, it's just everybody. And in those 6 games, the average percentage of shooting from 3 is 30.6. If they want to win these big games, yeah, they did it to Tennessee, yeah, they did it against Michigan. They gotta hit shots, period.
Absolutely right. Could not agree with you more. And I don't know if that's a psychology thing. I don't know if they start missing a couple and Cal's like, no, let's pound the paint. But something definitely has to change. Great observation. Great points by you. Let's move on to the other big game in this challenge. Tennessee holds home court, beats Texas in a pretty fun game, 82-71. The Vols got out to a pretty big lead at one point, 61-39 with 12:29 to go in the second half. And Texas rallied. Once they got down, Texas got it within, I think, 10 points at one point. But the star of the show, probably surprising, was Olivier Nkamhoua. The senior had 27 points on 12 of 15 shooting from the floor. He was tremendous in this game. Zakai Ziegler goes for 22, hit 3 threes in this game, 10 assists. Tennessee's, with what happened to Alabama, I'm sure we'll briefly talk about. Tennessee, it depends on what happened. Purdue's up 15-7 on Michigan State, so it depends on what happens, but Tennessee's at bare minimum would be number 2 in the ECB top 25 poll tomorrow. And they look, I put a tweet out on our Twitter that said, I know it's easy to not trust them based on past tournament history, but this Tennessee team looks like a legit Final Four team. Your guys' thoughts on this victory against Texas?
I thought they played really well. I mean, they didn't shoot the ball well at all. 31% from the three-point line, 6 of 19. But Zakai Ziegler, you mentioned him, 22 and 10. I think he's the difference maker. Santiago Vescovi, he had 12 and 8, but the star of the show was definitely Nkamhoua. 27, 3 assists, 8 rebounds, played 33 minutes. Tennessee's defensively, they're really fucking good. We know that top 3. I think they're still the number 1 defensive team in the country, according to KenPom. But offensively, they need to keep showing this consistency because they've been beating teams. Besides the Kentucky game, every time they win, they've been beating teams' ass. And it's really interesting watching this. And Texas, man, they've been on a win streak coming into this game. They got down early, started to fight their way, claw their way back. Jabari Rice came off the bench, had 21 for them. But once again, their three-point shooting is not good at all. They shot 29.2%. They can't hit shots either. So hats off to Tennessee. And Tennessee's definitely, if they hit shots and consistently get better offensively, they're definitely a Final Four caliber team.
One of the biggest things, that was a differential also was just Tennessee absolutely dominated the boards. I mean, they out-rebounded Texas 38-23 on the offensive end. It was pretty close, 11-8. But the biggest thing with Tennessee is they just are so heavy relying on their starters. I mean, their bench only had 3 points last night. So to really be, a true tournament team, I mean, you're going to have to face some – you're going to face some, adversity, come time. It's like, you got to have somebody step up that's maybe not in your starting 5. If you get in foul trouble, something like that, I think that's going to be the deciding factor. But overall, no, we thought this was going to be a slugfest, or at least I did when I predicted. And I tell you, it was a lot more of an offensive game than what I, originally expected. They opened the lead up to 22, got it down to 10-11. But no, I think Texas, the biggest differential is they still got to hit shots, kind of like you guys touched on.
Tennessee, the way they play, reminds me a lot of Virginia, because if they can get their footing defensively early and suffocate you, they have more offense than Virginia. I know, again, you don't trust their offense. Phil's mentioned this, but when it comes down to nut cutting time, man, I trust a guy like Zakai Ziegler and Vescovi and all their bigs to make a play. And the way they play, they just get out and beat you up and get out early. So the offense doesn't become an issue most games. But this team they're big, with the exception of Ziegler. I get that, but they're big. They're nasty. They defend. What will happen, again, back to Phil's point weeks ago, what happens when they get in the tournament? The rims are a little tighter. You're playing on floors you've not seen. You're playing teams that you don't really know. If you have a cold shooting night and the other team's hitting, how does Tennessee respond? But on the surface, man, they look like one of the best teams in the country. And on the Texas end of things, Sir Jabari Rice has been tremendous coming over for them. He had 21 in this game, Marcus Carr 11. And when they made that rally coming down for 22, he was attacking the rim, hitting jump shots in transition. Didn't really get much out of Tyrese Hunter, 7 points in this game. Dylan Dessou's been kind of disappointing this year coming over from Vandy, 2 points in this game. Texas, they were kind of all over the place. Didn't really get, outside of Rice, didn't really get a whole lot of great performances. What do we think of Texas? We know how good their ceiling is and how good they can be, but do you trust them to get to the second weekend right now? And I mean that. I know it's going to sound crazy because they're ending up with a top 4 seed. I just think with the right matchup that they can see an early exit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know if I don't know if they have the consistency, especially when it comes tournament time and the spotlight's on, and March Madness always brings those upsets. And I think they're going to be a team that's easily susceptible to getting a 4 versus 13 or a 3-14 that we love to see an upset, and the Cinderella team starts, and I think they're the team that has an opportunity to be an early exit.
I think the big discrepancy here is they just don't hit shots. I mean, they're shooting 33.2% from the three-point line. That's not good enough to fucking... And if you're playing a team that's able to hit shots and also defend, get out and run, that's definitely a mismatch for them. Definitely can see them going out the first weekend. And but the thing is, like, they got enough talent if they're hitting shots, and if they can put it together in March, and they can go on to a run where they can make a second weekend plus type of a run if they hit shots. But that's the key for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to one of the biggest shockers of the day yesterday in the Big 12 SEC Challenge. Number 1 in the ECB Top 25 poll, Alabama went to Oklahoma and got Soonered up by the Sooners. I mean, it was an absolute ass whooping. Alabama led 2-0. Was their only lead. Oklahoma wins this game 93-69. Fellas, your immediate reaction to this absolute domination by the Oklahoma Sooners?
I don't know if Alabama ever got off the bus, honestly. Like, everything I was watching and, kind of read about afterwards and, kind of clicked in and checked out the game and realized that it wasn't even close. But I don't know if Alabama even thought there was a game yesterday. I mean, they just never started out. They never got rolling. They never even were competitive in this game. Oklahoma dominated every aspect, and they flat put it on.
Yeah, I don't think they showed up at all. The thing is, they almost took it down to Mississippi State earlier in the week, too. They struggled against them and almost got beat by them, but ended up pulling it out, and they did get beat here. Oklahoma, I mean, they put up 93 points. Hats off to them. Fucking Grant Sherfield had 30 points in this game. 6 assists, 3 rebounds. Very efficient game, 11-20 from the field. 4-5 from the three-point line, so he's stretching out, hitting some shots. Hill had 26 points. Once again, another efficient night, 9 of 11 from the field, 8 rebounds. Tanner Groves, his ability to stretch it out and hit on that pick and pop is just disgusting. 14 points, 5 of 7 from the field, 12 rebounds. He had a double-double. And as a team, Oklahoma just hit the blitz them from the three-point line. 9 of 13, that's 69%. Alabama couldn't guard the perimeter, couldn't guard the three-point line, and that was his biggest fault. Clowney didn't really play his best. Brandon Miller had only 11 points, 4 of 14 from the field. Didn't really play his best. Devon Quinley had 12 points coming off the bench, but he fouled out. Hats off to Oklahoma. Huge win for them.
Yeah, the Sooners got a dominant resume win. And I do want to ask, because I've seen it kind of bandied about by some Alabama people. Do you think what's going on with Darius Miles, do you think that's finally catching up with Bama? Because in the immediate aftermath, Bama was continuing to dominate teams. But this week, you mentioned they played the close one to Mississippi State on the road, and then they get absolutely throttled here. Do you think what's going on with their former teammate, however you want to look at it, is finally starting to catch up and affect them mentally? Because this is not the Alabama we've come to know.
I think one of the biggest things is he was just somebody to rely on and stuff like that. I mean, every team, when you lose a guy, it just runs the culture. It kind of runs the camaraderie that you have with your team. And I think overall, but it was like, I don't know if it's really that showing up or if it was just they just got lazy, because I mean, they flat got beat on every screen. They were a step behind. Every rebound, they were a step behind. Like, I don't know what it was, but I mean, like I said, I don't know if it was just having somebody that was always there and a teammate to kind of rely back or put their back on, but it was like something's going on down. And I mean, this week was just a bad week overall for him.
Yeah, and playing a Porter Moser led team is the wrong team to not show up for a fight against, because whether they're good or bad, they're going to play their ass off against you. And Charles Bediako only played 8 minutes in this game. I mean, he's such a difference maker for this team at 7 foot with blocking shots and stuff. He only played 8 minutes. He only had 1 foul. I don't recall, did he get injured? Because him only playing 8 minutes, him being not in the game that long to protect the rim, was obviously a huge deal because Oklahoma shot 54% from inside the 3-point line. Do you know if he was injured or what was going on there?
I haven't heard anything. I didn't get to watch too much of this game. There's other games I was wanting to watch, but the time I did get to see, I mean, he was on the floor. I mean, he did what he could in his 8 minutes. The fact that he has 1 foul, I actually don't know. He had 3 turnovers, so maybe that had something to do with it, but I'm sure he probably tweaked an ankle, got injured or something. I don't know. I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to find that out real quick. But
yeah,
you mentioned the point about Alabama not coming to play, and it's not a good idea when you're playing a Porter Moser team. Yeah, it's not a good idea to have a bad game when you're playing any team in the Big 12 this year. It doesn't matter if it's Oklahoma or fucking West Virginia or even Texas Tech. Like, I'm sure Texas Tech would have probably done the same thing to them that Oklahoma did. Like, the Big 12 is just a different conference right now. By the way, they won the challenge 7-3 overall, so they dominated this the last Big 12 SEC challenge.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about one of the SEC's wins here in just a moment. But Alabama, I do want to clarify something because, again, put it on the Twitter at ACB Podcast 10, and it's getting a lot of love, as it should, because we've blown out Purdue all year. And I'm just going to be very direct here. We have blown them up. Peyton and I've seen them. We're going to see them more this year and the next coming weeks. They are a great team. But you talk about the most sensitive bunch of fans I've seen so far this year. They were upset that we had Alabama number 1 in our poll this week. Well, who have they beat? Blah, blah, blah. And then they want to jump on because Alabama got smacked around yesterday. Well, that's your number 1 team? I want to let you guys know something. That you are allowed, as a great team, you are allowed an off night here and there. Alabama went on the road to a tough place to play and just got shellacked. Not a good look, I understand. But you're allowed an off night. But to say that, they suck, that was your number 1 team, blah, blah, blah. Get out of your head that Purdue is this legacy program. We understand you guys are excited because for the last couple seasons, you finally got number 1. You're excited as you should be. But that doesn't mean you have to be so sensitive where you tear other teams down. Because I got news for you. If Alabama plays their potential, and they play Purdue, it'll be a great game. But I think Alabama, the ability to pull Purdue away from the rim, is going to beat Purdue in a head-to-head game. So let's stop this right now. You can be excited for your team. You can maybe be a little annoyed that we had Alabama number 1. But to tear them down to try to make your point good, because I got news for you. It's going to happen the way college basketball is. There is going to be a game before the end of the year that Purdue gets absolutely embarrassed. It will happen. Who's it going to be to? We don't know. But there's going to be a game Purdue loses by double digits and looks absolutely awful. And what goes around comes around. So when you're making fun of Alabama and trying to say they suck and blah, 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 and upset that we put them number 1, keep that same energy once Purdue gets their ass whooped, because it will happen. And it doesn't mean Purdue's a bad team. We all love this Purdue team. But it's going to happen.
Not all of us.
And you know
Not
what I'm
all
saying.
of us.
You know what I'm saying? But it's going to happen, and when it does happen, I hope you're ready for the shit talking and backlash. By the way, you're the same fans that for years that wanted to fire your coach, and who was over here defending your coach to you? But now you're in love with him. Make your mind up. That's my
let's get it on a t-shirt. #fire Painter. Let's do it, baby. And as far as Purdue goes, their last 4 games, 3 of their last 4 games has been 2-possession games. Go back to Thursday night against Michigan. They won the game 75-70. Go back to the following week on Sunday, January 22nd against Maryland. They won by 3 points, 58-55. Beat the shit out of Minnesota, but everybody does that. Who gives a fuck about Minnesota? And then the game before that, on January 16th, they beat Michigan State by 1 point. 64-63. So it's not like you're blowing these teams out like Alabama was fucking doing. Alabama was beating the shit out of fucking LSU by 40 points. They was beating the shit out of almost everybody they played. And yeah, they had an off night. Guess what? You guys did too when you lost to Rutgers 65-64. And we defended you there because why are we caring about being number 1? It's fucking January. Who gives a shit if you're number 1? How about get to the Final Four? That should be your one and only goal. Who gives a shit about rankings? Get to the tournament, which they obviously are. Be a high seed, which they obviously are. They're going to be. And fucking make a run in the tournament, get to the Final Four. That should be your fucking goal. Who gives a shit about all these rankings? And as far as them going to get their ass kicked probably here soon, it might be this Saturday. Am I right, Corey?
Oh, yeah. Because you know why? because they're coming down to the Assembly Hall, baby.
Hey, well,
Just like last year when we talked about it. Man, I can't wait.
I want to segue to Indiana, but let's real quick finish up this SEC Big 12 challenge real quick, and we'll segue to Indiana. Just a couple of quick results in this challenge that stood out. Missouri continues their hot streak. You just don't go into Missouri and beat them this year. They hit 14 of 30 3-point shots, 46, almost, if you round up, 47% from three. Kobe Brown looks like an all SEC, maybe the SEC player of the year. Demoy Hodge, 17 points. This Missouri team, Dennis Gates has changed their identity. They play fast. They run a spread offense where it's hard to defend. If you are not connected, they will hit shots. If you overplay, they attack the rim. They press you on defense. What a fun Missouri team that's now 16-5. They beat Iowa State 78-61, and we know how hot Iowa State's been. Obviously, no Caleb Grill in this game. Calster only 14. Jaron Holmes led it with 19. But Missouri, they are one of those teams that they're going to be in the tournament, and they could easily get red hot in these games and make a deep run in March. What a fun Missouri Tigers team to watch.
And the thing is, I mean, it's not like Iowa State didn't have shots either. Both of these teams were lighting the nets up. Both of them shot 40% plus from the three-point line, 6 of 15 from the three-point line for Iowa State, and you mentioned 14 of 30 from Missouri. And the thing is, Iowa State pretty much dominated the glass. 38 rebounds for Iowa State, 25 for Missouri, but still, Missouri was able to hold out that dub. And maybe while Iowa State was missing a guy like Caleb Grill, but it doesn't change the fact that Missouri is a good-ass team, better than any of us thought, and they're hard out in the tournament because if they hit shots, they got a all-SEC first-team type of player in Kobe Brown, and they got guys like fucking Isaiah Mosley, who I was wanting out of Louisville, a big-time player who hasn't really played his best to start the season off, or so for a couple months to start the season off, but he's still a type of player that can go get you 15-plus any given night, and they're hard out in the tournament, man. I wouldn't want to play them come March.
Absolutely not. Corey, the other one real quick I want to touch on, ended up being a great game. We kind of thought with the absences of Nick Smith, and obviously we know that I just forgot his name, the other kid from Arkansas that's out this year.
Trayvon Brazile.
What's his name? Brazile, thank you. We thought maybe, and the Baylor's been red hot. We've documented this over the last couple weeks, that this might be a little blowout considering it was at Baylor, but Arkansas kept this thing interesting. They led for a long stretch of this game. Baylor does what they do. They battled back with a great backcourt. Keontae George was star of stars in this game, 24 points. You know, he was tremendous. Cryer went for 20. But I do want to give some credit to Arkansas. Ricky Council continues to be one of the best scorers in college basketball. He had 25 points for Arkansas, did all he could do. Debo Davis was really good in this game for a long stretch of time, 16 points. It didn't really get much scoring production from everybody else, but Arkansas battled, man, and it's such a shame that they're not fully healthy because we got small glimpses back in November when they were healthy. Trayvon Brazile was there in Maui. Nick Smith only played a couple games. But, man, if Nick Smith and Brazile were on this team, we're talking a whole lot different about Arkansas. So I do want to give them credit because I still think they are extremely talented and can be very dangerous on any given night. But Peyton, Baylor is one of the hottest teams in the country right now.
Oh, yeah. Their backcourt is top 3 in my eyes, and I still think that they have the best backcourt in the country. And the reason is like I mentioned it Thursday night when we was talking about them when they beat Kansas on Monday. I mentioned it when you got guys like Cryer and Flagler and George who can all get buckets anytime they want to. It doesn't matter if one of them has an off game because the other two or one of them is going to go off. And it happened in the Kansas game. Keontae George only had like 8 points, but LJ Cryer stepped up in the first half of like 15 in the first half, and the second half, Flagler had 15 as well. And in this one, it showed. Guess what? Adam Flagler doesn't play well, has 5 points, 2 rebounds. Guess what? It's okay. LJ Cryer gets 20 points. Oh, that's not enough for you? Keontae George gets 24. I mean, those guys had 44 points coming off both of their fingertips combined. And defensively, the reason they struggled early on when they went on that 3-game losing streak because they could not defend the perimeter. I mean, go back. I mean, Iowa State, they gave up 77 points. TCU, they gave up 88 points. Kansas State, they gave up 97 points. The last 3 games, Oklahoma, January 21st, gave up 60 points. January 23rd on Monday, gave up 69 points, excuse me. And then yesterday, they only gave up 64 points. All 2 of those games, no team has scored over 70 points. They're finally getting better guarding the perimeter, and defensively, they're getting a lot better. And if they continue to hit shots, man, this team is Final Four good. Like you mentioned Thursday, they're cutting the nets down tight good. And defensively, they're getting it figured out, man. This team's scary. Baylor's fucking legit.
Hey, and how about the end of this game almost gave us one of the craziest endings in college basketball. Arkansas is going to the foul line with, I think it was like 2 seconds. I forget the exact time. And I forget who was on the free throw line. I'm wanting to say it was Debo Davis, but he steps up, misses the free throw. Baylor's up 3. It gets deflected out. Joseph Pinion wide open in the corner. I mean, nobody around within 100 yards of him. Wide open, lets the ball go as time expires. And I thought, holy shit, we're going to overtime. And it hit the top of the backboard. I thought, you couldn't have got a cleaner look. Imagine that goes to overtime off of a missed free throw, tip back, wide open 3. Crazy ending to this ball game. Corey, were you able to see that ending?
No, I wasn't able to, but I can tell you one thing. He wouldn't have been able to play for ECB because we can flat out shoot, man.
Buddy, tell him. Talk that shit. You know we can shoot.
I'm just saying, corner specialists, we may have a few of those.
Dude, we can light it up. We're going to get Team ECB together one day and run some people off the gym. But Corey, before we kind of round this weekend out of games, we got to talk about your Hoosiers. I was told you we would segue into them eventually. IU's won 5 in a row now. They dominated Ohio State last night in Assembly Hall, 86-70. This looks like a far cry from the team that had just lost 3 in a row to start the month of January. Talk to us about your Hoosiers, man, and Jalen Hood-Schifino put a show on last night.
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely could not miss from 3. The biggest thing is I mean, I've seen them kind of score the basketball. I've seen them kind of have the D, but last night, right there at the end of the first half, I mean, they went on a 15-0 run. I think they had 4 or 5 straight steals, and they just absolutely clamped down on Ohio State to kind of separate the game out. It was a close game throughout the majority of the first half, and then out of nowhere, it was just like they just intensified really came and increased the intensity, and they just absolutely suffocated Ohio State, turned the ball over, and it led to, I think, 4 or 5 straight fast break layups to take it from, I think, a 3-point lead out to a 15, 16-point lead at the half. Came into the second half, and Ohio State tried to throw some punches, closed it down to like 9, but Indiana just held. Trace Jackson Davis with Jalen Hood-Schifino. I mean, they are starting to figure it out. Malik Reneau came in, played some really good minutes, innings. It's like I'm a baseball guy or something. But no, he came in, played some key minutes. He's starting to figure it out, moving his feet. From the 3-point line, I think they shot 50% throughout the entire game. I mean, they hit the shots they needed. I mean, it's an exciting time. I don't know what happened in that 3-hour practice with Mike Woodson before this win streak kind of started, but they're taking out the competition on the floor and through the rafters. So it's an exciting time.
And Xavier Johnson seems to be getting closer each day to coming back. If he can integrate himself back in slowly to what Indiana's doing, that gives them another weapon in the backcourt. I'm telling you, Peyton, Indiana, Lenardi's got them in his updated bracketology late last night, has them to a 5 seed, one of the first teams ready to jump to a 4 line. Indiana gets hot, especially we're going to preview this game fully in depth in the midweek episode of ECB, so that will come. But if they can beat Purdue next week, Peyton, the Hoosiers are all the way back, and I'm all the way back in on them. This is a dangerous team, despite not shoot. I mean, they did hit 10 of 20 from 3 last night, 50%. But if they can continue to play defense the way they're playing, play through Trace, and have a superstar in Jalen Hood-Schifino continue to show out, Peyton, this is an Indiana team that not only can be second weekend, can push. I don't know if they can get there, but they can push for a potential Final Four.
If Xavier Johnson comes back and he's healthy and he is good, Xavier, and he can put a string together in March where he can go like a Remy Martin did last year for Kansas, he's capable of doing that. I'm not writing Indiana off saying that they can't get to the Final Four, because they can absolutely get to the Final Four. Defensively, they're great. Offensively, they're good. TJD is a player of the year type player. He had 18 points, 10 rebounds. He had 6 assists, dropping dimes off as well. I mean, that's incredible for him. Only 1 foul. And the fact is, they shot well in this game, 50%, 10 of 20 from the three-point line. I like this IU squad, man. They're built to win. Defensively, they're really fucking good. And if Xavier Johnson comes back and he's healthy, it could be type of another, like I mentioned, it could be another Remy Martin type situation where he just goes off in the fucking tournament, goes off in March, and Indiana can be fucking going to the Final Four, something Purdue will not be doing because they fucking suck. Fuck Purdue. But one thing I will say, what?
We're supposed to be media here.
Media,
hey, I'm going to say that I've never agreed with Peyton so much before on this show.
Yeah, man. Well, you want to know why Indiana's on this 5-game winning streak? Oh, by the way, before I ask that, if you're Ohio State, don't play Indiana teams, men's or women's, at Assembly Hall. Don't fucking do it. Because the fucking women's team beat them fucking, well, I forgot what the score was, but they beat them in Assembly Hall in a big-time game. Top 5, top 10 matchup, and it was a hell of a game. And Mackenzie Holmes, I think, had like 25 in that game. But, yeah. You know why Indiana men's and women's is doing so good right now? And Corey, this is for you, man. You want to know why? Nope, never mind. Alright, go ahead. I got it. Fucking never mind. Fucking ad. Fuck YouTube music, man. Well, I'll figure it out. I'll do it Thursday.
Hey, there is one thing I did want to point out about. Go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, they also hit their free throws, 12-17 from the foul line. That's been a big Achilles heel the last couple of years for them. They start hitting free throws, man, as much as they go to the line. That's a huge plus as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, they absolutely have a conference player of the year and an All-American contention player in Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, he didn't have his average night of, what was it, 30 or 29 and 21 or whatever that he's been averaging over the last few games. But I mean, he still came out. And I can say that Ohio State was the first team that actually tried to take away the left hand and tried to double down and do some things. And he still, Peyton kind of touched on it. He passed the ball out. He did a lot of huge things, dishing the ball, limited the turnovers, and just a kind of random fact, but having Race Thompson back in the starting lineup, having another senior leader, Indiana, when they have both those guys, are actually, I think they're 15 and 3. And then when they're missing those guys, they're 2 and 3. So, having Race back or having at least one of them in the starting lineup, maybe without the other, is a huge differential. And I think if Xavier comes back, kind of integrates himself back into the offense, takes care of the ball, I think Indiana, the ceiling is getting higher and higher. I'm excited to see what happens comes March.
Yeah, good stuff from IU. Looking at this Purdue game, 54 seconds left to go in the first half. Boilers are up 36-22. So as long as they don't collapse, looks like they're going to be back to the number 1 team in the nation come tomorrow. But what we're going to do now is take our one and only commercial break of the show. We're going to let some ads play, hear from some of our sponsors.
Just before we do that.
Oh, yeah, you want to talk about what happened in the Assembly Hall, right?
Well, I was going to say, I want to touch on it. If we can't take him out on the floor, we'll take him up or out from above. So
I barely heard that. Say that again.
Absolute freak act. I was going to say, if we can't take him out on the floor, we're going to take him out from above, because that was an absolute freak accident that could have absolutely ended dangerously.
Let's save that. We'll use that as a teaser. We'll come back with what happened, and then we'll get into some previews right after these commercial breaks here. What's going on, everybody? This is Josh here, and I'm here to let you know that we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they are here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off of your first purchase.
What's going on, everybody? This is Will Tondo, the co-founder of House Enterprise, and I'm happy to announce that the Everything College Basketball podcast is now part of the House of College Hoops Network. We're really excited to bring you some premier college basketball content this season. So check out the website, www.house-enterprise.com, for all of our content creators, all of our college hoop stuff, and we're excited to get this season rolling.
What's going on, everybody? This is Conrad here from Everything Pro Wrestling, here to let you know that Everything Pro Wrestling is a show by the fans, for the fans. Every Monday, we are live at 6:05 Eastern Standard Time with Clash of the Podcast, where you can listen to myself and my tag team partner, Sean Hubbard of Hubbard Wrestling Weekly, talk all the latest and greatest in pro wrestling. You might even find an old school topic or two as well mixed in. And every Wednesday, we go live on YouTube once again with AEW Dynamite post-show coverage. So at 10:05, head on over to the Everything Pro Wrestling channel and talk what we just saw on Dynamite with us. And did I mention that we are on all available audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Thank you so much for listening to me, and let's get back to everything college basketball.
To all of our good people, go check out houseenterprise.com. That's where we are located out as well. Great collection of writers over there. As I mentioned, I was part of the House College Hoops podcast on Thursday evening. Go give that a listen. Go check out, as we mentioned top of the show, our friends and our sister side at Everything Pro Wrestling. You can find them where Conrad had mentioned. I'm sure they're doing a big-time Royal Rumble review. Look ahead to what's happened on the road to WrestleMania. It's a fun time if you are a pro wrestling fan. And if you're a lapsed pro wrestling fan, this is the best time of year to get back into it. A lot of great stuff in the world of professional wrestling. Corey, we kind of used it as a teaser, but before we get into the games for the beginning part of this upcoming week, because we've got some big ones out in the Big 12, as we do every week. One big-time rematch we want to discuss, but go ahead and let everybody know exactly what you were talking about, because this could have been catastrophe if this went a little differently.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So coming back from halftime, Ohio State was back on the floor. Indiana was kind of breaking their huddle, but Bryce Sensabaugh was walking back towards the defensive side of the court, right at half court, and all of a sudden a metal bar from the rafters actually fell and landed probably about maybe 5 to 8 feet away from him, right at half court, and kind of caused a little bit of a delay for a few minutes for them to kind of go up and check everything out. But talk about an absolute freak and accident that could have ended in disastrous for somebody.
Well, Matt Norlander of CBSSports.com had tweeted, because he was in attendance, and he tweeted about it, that it concerned Ohio State head coach Chris Holtmann, Peyton, to the point where he was talking to, I think it was not their athletics director, but like their basketball operations person, about what could be done if they could potentially even postpone this game, because he was nervous about the optics, maybe more stuff falls, and rattled, according to Matt Norlander. And to be honest, I think I would too, because if a bar is going to fall, who's to say something else ain't going to fall? And God forbid that whole Tron came down. We would be talking a completely different, tragic situation right now. Thank God it didn't. Thank God the bar didn't hit Sensabaugh or any other player. But what a crazy, scary situation that turned out to be potentially.
Oh, you're talking about scary. Fucking Griffey, your damn cat behind you just scared the shit out of me. I did not expect him to be right behind you. Holy fuck, holy freak, it scared the shit out of me. But talking about this, it was a scary incident. Thank God it didn't happen. Thank God it pulled an Uncle Howdy and completely missed him, because that could have been catastrophic, like you mentioned. Yeah, thank God it didn't happen.
Could have been bad, but you know what? Let's turn our attention to the action this week, Peyton. What's on the docket for the beginning part of this upcoming week in college basketball?
Well, we got Kentucky facing Ole Miss. I'm kidding. We got to go to the rematch. It's time. They beat us in their home building. They beat us in the Octagon of Doom. They beat us in the Bramlage Coliseum. Get a better name. I can't even pronounce it correctly. They beat us in Kansas State. Now they're coming to the Fog. It's the rematch. It's Kansas State taking on the Jayhawks. Kansas State won 83 to 82 in overtime. But let's not forget the first matchup. They went ballistic from three. They shot 41% from the three-point line. 7 of 17 from the three-point line. Let's also not forget that 3 of Kansas starters, KJ Adams, Grady Dick, and Kevin McCullough, all fouled out. Let's not forget that DeJuan Harris, the best point guard in the country, went out like 3 minutes after he banged his head off of the floor. Let's not forget that Jalen Wilson had an incredible, a clear night, 38 points in that first matchup. And would have won the game. We was one timeout away from potentially winning that. We went up 3. Instead, we went up. Bill Self called a timeout and we lost. Who cares? This game is going to be very interesting and very fun to watch. Fog Allen's going to be loud. Like I said, it's a revenge game. There's not too many coaches in the world that I take when it comes to revenge games more than Bill Self. He's incredible at it. We just snapped off a 3-game losing streak. Bill Self in his career at Kansas has never, we forgot to mention this Thursday and Sunday, but he has never went on a 4-game losing streak at his tenure at Kansas. And it still continues that streak as we beat Kentucky Saturday night. And now we get Kansas State Tuesday night. January 31st. I don't know what time that game tips off. I'm sure it's actually going to be on ESPN Plus, which that actually sucks.
That's so stupid.
I wish that game was going to be on actual television, but unfortunately it's going to be ESPN Plus. So hopefully the viewers-wise, because the first game, this game drew like 1.5 million viewers. I think it was. It was a big-time viewers gate for them, for ESPN. I don't know why they put it on ESPN Plus, but
what are we doing? Networks, Big 12, what are we doing?
Yeah, Ken Palm has Kansas winning this game 75-69, and I see Kansas winning this game, but I think it's going to be another high-scoring one. DeJuan Harris is going to play lights out like he did in the first game against them when he had 13 assists. Jalen Wilson's probably going to go for another 25-point plus game. But I think the difference maker, KJ Adams, he ended up, like I mentioned, he fouled out. But before he fouled out, he was just eating them alive inside. His athleticism and the way he played in that first game was a difference maker, and I think it's going to be a difference maker in this one. I think he gets about 20 plus in this game. It's going to be hard fought, but I got to go with my Jayhawks. I think Kansas wins, gets the revenge 79-75.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to pick against Kansas in the fog, but there's something about this K-State team that just intrigues the hell out of me. You mentioned that the first game, you forgot to say that Desi Sills went off as well. 24 points in this game was incredible. Do I think he'll replicate that? Probably not. Do I think he can have double figures? Absolutely. But also, I have to go back and look. If I remember right, Marquise Knoll did not play well in this ball game. Yeah, he had 4 points.
Yeah,
so
DeJuan Harris shut him out.
I know the Kansas perspective. You're also talking, though, that Noel did not play well. I don't think that's going to happen again. It's I don't think Sills is going to play that well, but I also don't think Noel's going to play that bad. So if Noel continues to get red hot scoring the ball, that's a whole new can of worms to worry about. I think this is a fun one. I think these teams are more closely similar than they are away from each other. And this could be a toss-up. I do think it's going to be a toss-up. My brain says Kansas wins this game in Fog Allen and splits the regular season series. My brain says everything that you mentioned, Jalen Wilson with Dick and KJ Adams will do enough to win this game 84-82. But my heart, because Noel did not play well, my heart says K-State wins this game and sweeps them with Noel going for a 30-piece. You get Keontae Johnson continuing to play well with like 18, 19, 20 points. Maybe Sills gives you 12. My heart says Kansas State wins this game 85-84. So I'm really torn on this, but I'll go with the brain on this one. I'll say Kansas wins this game. I think it's a close one. I think Noel shows up in this game when he didn't in the first one, but I think this is a very close ball game all the way through. Kansas going to stay out of foul trouble, just like the first meeting. Kansas State puts so much pressure going downhill on you. They will ball screen Kansas. They will spread them out, and they will attack the paint. Kansas has to stay out of foul trouble because if they're in foul trouble early, K-State can gap them. And we've seen a team go into Allen Fieldhouse and put a beating on them already this year. Kansas has to be very cognizant of defending without fouling, slowing K-State's backcourt down, But I think Kansas will do enough to win this game, but I would not be shocked if K-State sweeps them this year.
There's two key factors of this game, and it's my overall number 2 contender player of the year, Jalen Wilson, and an absolute stud of Grady Dick. I think both of those guys are going to be pissed off about the way the last game turned out. I think where's this game at again, Peyton? I can't remember.
Oh, it's in Fog Allen Fieldhouse.
Okay, yeah, Allen Fieldhouse. I think that's factor number 3. So between those 3 things, I think there's no way that Kansas doesn't even the series out in this matchup. I think Kansas comes out, has another great performance out of those 2 guys. I think overall they kind of figure out some things. I think Bill Self's going to make some adjustments just like he did against Kentucky on Saturday. I think Kansas takes this one. Let's go 81-76.
And Peyton, ESPN Plus thing ridiculous. Like, how do you have a top? You should be able to, like they do in pro football, be able to flex games for like a bigger game that you can move it to a primetime slot. They should be able to flex this. I don't care if it was on the schedule earlier in the year. Now knowing what we know about both these teams, they should be able to change something around and move this to where it is on national cable. Like, this is ridiculous. It's not on, and you have to have ESPN Plus. Which I've got it, but not everybody does. So everybody in the world should be able to watch this game on Tuesday night.
What time's the game on Tuesday
Peyton,
night?
what we got up next?
Let me figure it out. It's 8 p.m.
Oh, you know why it's not on is because Indiana and Maryland are playing on ESPN2. So
Oh,
they
God.
take priority.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that
right.
might be true. We'll see.
Hey, you mentioned Indiana in the Maryland game. Go ahead and let's talk about it. Hoosiers on the road at Maryland. What are you feeling?
I think this is going to be the toughest road matchup that we've had in a little bit. Maryland's just one of those teams that on any given night can beat you, especially at home. I wish I was more confident in this game than I am, especially when we just went up to the barn and struggled against a Minnesota team that was lacking. Indiana just never plays well against Maryland. I don't know what it is. They had our number back in for the national championship back in 2001 to. Every year it looks like it's always a great battle for in the Big Ten ever since they came over. I think Trace Jackson Davis has to go off again. I think Jalen Hood, Scafino needs to have another great game, and I think Indiana needs somebody else to step up. If it's Tamar Bates or if it's Galloway or if it's whoever it may be, but I think Miller Kopp has to hit a couple shots early to kind of be a differential maker. I wish I could say I was more confident than I am. My heart obviously wants to go with Indiana taking a really close, maybe 1 or 2 point lead, or win. I think no matter what, Indiana needs to put up 80 points again. Plus, the biggest thing is how well we can come out and respond early. Playing up there, my brain says Maryland, but my heart says Indiana. So I'm going to listen to my heart this time. I'm going to go Indiana 81-78.
Well, here's something else you want to keep in mind too, is that this could be this is a trap game, right? Because whether you understand you got to play and obviously beat Maryland, everybody's in the back of their minds thinking about Saturday at home against Purdue. That's the reality of it. But you got to take care of business against Maryland first. So this is a trap game for Indiana. If you don't come ready to play, Maryland's good enough to clip you. I just like the way Indiana's playing. Yeah, their last couple on the road, they had that dominant win against Illinois, who continues to surge right now. And then, last Wednesday, you struggled at Minnesota. So Indiana's, like most teams, difficult on the road. You kind of never know who you're going to get. But I think Indiana, their post play is, with Trace Jackson Davis, is a little too much. Maryland playing for their tournament life, 14-7, and I think they're solidly in right now, but schedule's not going to get any easier. So with 7 losses already, a win like this would only help solidify, them being in the tournament. They got a top 50 offense and a top 50 defense. Maryland is a tough out, especially at home. Jameer Young has been absolutely outstanding in the backcourt for him. Dante Scott's been good. Hakeem Hart has been up and down, but he's been pretty good. This is a tough matchup. And again, like I said, it's a trap game. But at the end of the day, I just think Indiana is playing at an entirely different level right now. Kim has them losing 72-70. I think Indiana takes care of business, sets up a massive matchup on Saturday in Assembly Hall against Purdue. And I think Indiana wins this game 68-61.
Quick question, Coy. Which team does Trace Jackson Davis play for again?
The Indiana Hoosiers.
Okay, well, Indiana wins this game by 8 points or more. There you go.
Well,
I will point out there. I was gonna say I just will point out there's one key factor for Indiana this year is 14 out of their 15 wins this year have come by 10 plus points. So they kind of need to show that they can battle a close game and win it out. Or actually, sorry, 13 out of the 15 now that the Minnesota game. So 13 out of 15 wins have been 10 plus points. So I think that's going to be, a key factor. Peyton kind of touched on that 8 range. I think it'll be a little bit closer, but can they battle out and win that close game?
That's a very good stat, actually. The other game being close was the Xavier game earlier in the year on the road. Let's talk about their counterpart, though. Purdue right now is taking care of business because Michigan State at home, but they've got a trap game as well. Wednesday night, they play host to Penn State. We just off-air talked about Penn State. Penn State's a tournament team, fellas, and they shoot the three with crazy effectiveness, and they're going to take a lot of them. Purdue's number 4 in offense right now, number 19 in defense. Their three-point defense is really great. 29.5% opposing teams are shooting from three. That's going to be the difference maker right there. Because again, Penn State shoots the three ball so damn well, and they will take a lot of them. They are 20th in the nation, shooting 38.3%, and it would probably be a lot higher if they didn't take so many attempts from three. They are actually 4th in the nation when it comes to percentage, point distribution, total percentage of points. They have 43.5% of their total points coming from the three-point line. So it shows how effective they are. And they've got an unsung hero on their team, a potential All-American, Big Ten, all Big Ten guy. Jalen Pickett is tremendous. He's had a triple-double this year as a 6'4" guard. He rebounds, obviously. He assists. He steals. He shoots. He passes. I think this for Purdue is a trap game as well, because what happens? How do you beat Purdue? You pull Edey and their bigs away from the rim, and Penn State runs a spread offense that will make Edey have to defend the three-point line more than he's accustomed to. If guys like Pickett and Seth Lundy, and especially a guy like Andrew Funk, can hit shots, oh my God, I think Penn State can upset them. I don't think they will. I think Purdue ends up at the end of the game winning this by double digits, 10, 11, 12 points. But man, if Penn State can have one of those nights like they've had all season where they hit 14, 15 threes, I think we're talking about another upset.
I hate to keep doing this because it sounds like so simple, but to be honest, it kind of is. Which team does Zach Edey play for again?
Plays for Purdue.
He's going to get a double-double. And the thing is, defensively, he's going to get drawn away from the rim. Penn State's going to stretch it out. They're going to be able to hit some shots. They're going to do that to him defensively. He's going to have trouble. But offensively, Penn State's going to have to guard the paint. With Zach Edey on the floor, he's going to slow the game down, just him being on the paint or being on the floor, just period.
I bet they zone.
Well, go ahead and do that, because you have to face guys like Braden Smith who can hit shots. Fletcher Loyer can hit shots. Go ahead and do that. Because Zach Edey, he's a good passer, too. So it's not only what he does in the paint. He's able to pass it out of a double team. And if he can just get the ball down to the paint, and they try to play zone, and they try to lock him down low, then guess what? He's just going to kick it to Fletcher Loyer for a three-pointer in the corner. I think Penn State's in trouble. I think Purdue wins this game. I think it's going to be tough majority of the game, but Purdue stretches out late and wins this game by 6 points.
But you got to pick your poison. And Purdue, yes, they have shooters. They absolutely have guys. Fletcher Loyer, Braden Smith, Brandon Newman, Mason Gillis can hit it, Ethan Morton. They've got shooters. But you got to pick your poison. And if you can limit Zach Edey and make Purdue take a bunch of threes, and just hope that they miss. I think that's for Penn State, at least. I think that's your only hope, because I don't think you can man them for a whole game, because you're going to get diced up unless you decide to go the Shaq route when Shaq was at LSU and Indiana knocked him out in the tournament. And Bob Knight said, we'll let Shaq get his 30 and 20. But everybody else is going to get shut down. You could do it that way too, but I think you play the zone, make Purdue an outside shooting team, pray that they miss, and you hit a bunch. I think for Penn State, that's the path to victory. Let's go back to Monday night, because there was a game in the Big 12 we forgot to mention. We got Baylor going on the road to Texas, Peyton. We know the Moody Center has been rocking all year. They're coming off of loss to Tennessee. Baylor's red hot. Any chance that Texas takes down Baylor in this game?
They hit shots. I mean, anyone can pull off any type of upset, especially at home if you hit shots. I mean, it's that simple. But they got the talent. You know, Marcus Collins's a really good player, and I think Tyrese Hunter has to play well, has to give Collier some help. And I think the front court, like guys like Cunningham coming off the bench, I think he's going to be key for this game. He's going to have to be able to play with a guy like Flo Thamba and be able to go back and forth with him on both sides of the floor. But I'm in love. I love Baylor's guard play. Keontae George is so damn good. He's so fun to watch. And then Adam Flagler is a bucket getter, and so is LJ Cryer. I think Baylor goes into the Moody Center and picks up some numbers, wins this game 84-78.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right. Baylor should win this game, but we know what the Moody Center does, and Baylor just played a close one against Arkansas that didn't have two of their absolute best players, maybe their two best players. I think Texas knocks them off here. I think the Big 12 is just so wild and crazy right now. I think Texas gets them. Probably a high-scoring affair. Well, not crazy, but probably like low 80s. So I'll say Texas wins this game 83-79. There's something about that center that just changes this Texas team. The crowd's going to be electric, 10,000 strong in there. I got Texas on the slight upset.
I think we've kind of touched on it. Baylor has the best guard play or the best backcourt in college basketball this year. We talked, or you just kind of mentioned the Arkansas Baylor game. The biggest differential is good teams find a way to win close games, and that's what they did against Arkansas. They had one of their worst shooting nights, shooting 33% from the floor, and they still found a way to win. I think Texas is going to defend. I think just Baylor just has too many options. I think Baylor goes into the Moody Center and steals one. I think it's going to be a really good game. I just think the inconsistency of Texas plays factor again. I think Baylor wins this one 79-71.
Hey, real quick, we got two more on the docket. This one, we don't have to go full in depth, but I think it's very interesting clash on Tobacco Road. Wake Forest goes into Cameron Indoor on Tuesday night in a battle of upper mid-tier ACC teams jockeying for position. Wake Forest is 14-8 on the year. Duke is 15-6. Duke blew out Georgia Tech yesterday to kind of have a nice feel-good win, kind of see if they get back on track. But Duke's got Carolina on Saturday. We talk about, again, trap games with Indiana and Purdue. This could be very much a trap game. Wake Forest is tougher than hell. Shout out to our guy, David Williamson, Tyree Appleby, great backcourt down there in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Damari Monsanto has kind of shown out this year as a junior year. Cameron Hildreth. This is a pretty solid Wake Forest team. Again, not fully in depth, but just your thoughts. Do you think I'll just put it out here if I'll stop stuttering. Wake Forest gets this win in Cameron. I just don't trust Duke. I don't trust their offense. I just don't trust them, and I like this Wake Forest team, so I'm saying Wake goes into Cameron and beats them.
I think it's going to be a heck of a game. I know Duke's been struggling, up and down, inconsistency, but I just don't see them going and losing one down Tobacco Road, especially at home and Cameron Indoor. I think Duke takes this one 71-66.
I think Duke's in trouble long term if Dewey Whitehead does not come back. I don't know what the extent of his injury is when he got injured at Virginia Tech, but I know it didn't look good, and I don't know how long he's going to be out. But if he's gone for any extended period of time, then they're in trouble, offensively and defensively. Like, he's a good defender. His athleticism to be able to make plays above the rim is just ridiculous, and but I think it's going to be fine because Filipowski's been incredible this year for them offensively, putting up some numbers. I think it's going to be good enough that, like Corey mentioned, it's at Cayman Indoor. I think Duke squeezes this one out in a low-scoring defensive battle. I think it's going to be 68-61. Duke wins.
And then the last one out in the Big East Conference on Wednesday evening, Xavier playing host to Providence. This is a battle. Xavier got beat up by a surging Creighton team last night or yesterday afternoon out in Omaha, Peyton. This is a big one. You look at the Big East Conference right now, and if I can get this to pull up, Marquette is now technically ahead of Xavier. They're both tied at 9-2. Providence is right behind them, a half game out at 8-2. Creighton has surged up to 7-3. That's the top four right now in the Big East. This game right here honestly could be for first place depending on what happens with Marquette. How do we feel about this game down in the Cintas Center, Providence coming into Xavier?
This game's going to be fun to watch. Watch Bryce Hopkins be able to do what he does. I think he has a good game. I think he has a double-double in this one. I think Jared Bynum, he's been struggling all year this year. He's had a couple games where he'd go for like maybe 20 points plus or 15 points plus, but overall, he's just been struggling. Has not been the player that he was last year. I think he's going to be very important, detrimental for this team in this game. But guys like Sully Bone's so damn good. It's a shame that when ESPN on College Game Day was talking about the most impactful transfers coming into this year, and that he wasn't even on the list. It's a shame that he's not number one, because he is number one in my eyes. He's the most impactful transfer in college basketball this year, and he's so good and so key for this Xavier squad. And the fact that they lost to a Creighton team who's starting to rise up, which I predicted that one. They're starting to play a lot better now that Cockburn is back. Xavier's going to be pissed off, and they're going to want to defend their home court. And if this was at the AMP, I'd pick Providence to win. But it's not. You got to take the show on the road. Can't always win games at your home building. You can't always play games at your home building. You got to go to Xavier. And Xavier's a tough place to play. Sean Miller's going to get it figured out. Xavier wins this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. KenPom has Xavier winning 81-77, and Xavier's a tale of two teams, kind of like Purdue was last year. They're sixth in offense, and they are 95th in defense. We've heard Sean Miller in recent weeks talk about the struggles defensively. They got to figure it out. Providence brings in the number 21 ranked offense in the country. They're 58th in defense. Providence, 5th in the nation in offensive rebound percentage, 37.7%. It's going to be interesting because Xavier does a good job keeping teams off the backboard. But going along with Xavier's defense, they're 299th in three-point defending. They allow teams to shoot 36% from three. And Providence isn't a great three-point shooting team themselves. They only shoot 33.9, which puts them at 170 in the country. But this is going to be a slugfest. The Big East is it's a physical league. Like, we think the Big Ten is physical. The Big East is physical and nasty. And Providence, that plays into their favor. But at the end of the day, being at home, you mentioned guys like Sully Boom, Colby Jones, Zach Freemantle, Jack Nunge. I think that KenPom has this pretty much right on the head. It's going to be a very close one-possession, two-possession game all the way through. This could be a game that has like 10 or 12 lead changes as well. But I think at the end of the ball game, Xavier wins by a couple points. So I'm going to go with what KenPom says. I think Xavier wins 81-77.
I think Xavier is one of the best overall rounded teams. I think Creighton's honestly one of the best 8-loss teams, if not the best 8-loss team in the entire country right now. They went through a rough stretch.
Absolutely.
And I mean, no matter what, when you go out to Omaha, Omaha is just a special place. It's tough to play. I mean, college basketball is tough to play on the road, period. But I think that was kind of a deciding factor. I think Creighton's starting to figure it out. So, but Xavier, at home in the Cintas, center is very difficult. Right now Providence is playing at Villanova and struggling. They're only up by 1 point with 8 minutes to go in the second half. It's the Big East. I mean, it's good basketball. Xavier's extremely tough. I think they're going to right the ship, and I don't see them dropping 2 straight games. I just don't see it, period. I think they take this one. I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to say 87-74. I think they're going to run away with it a little bit.
All right, let's go for the bank on it. For this will encapsulate the whole week, since we don't do bank on it and shout outs during the midweek episode, since it's a little shorter, a little more direct. For this one, this encapsulates the whole week of college basketball ahead, and it's a lot to cover. So I'm going to, Peyton, I don't know if you have the updated graphic or if you've got it or not. Do you? No? Okay.
No,
so
since Phil, I'll get it back up once Phil comes back.
Okay, so we will get back on track with all that. But I'm going to take a parlay here, bank on it. I'm going to double dip. I say Kentucky wins both their games this week against Ole Miss and Florida. I think it's Florida too, I said, right? Florida. Let me look that up, make sure real quick. I think it was Ole Miss, I know, on Tuesday night, and Florida on Saturday. Let me double check. I should know this off the top of my head.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah, yes. So they go on the road, Ole Miss Tuesday, and then home against Florida Saturday. I think Kentucky gets back to 16 wins. So I think Kentucky sweeps the week, and I think Indiana sweeps the week. I'm going with the Hoosier State and the Wildcat State, the Bluegrass State, should I say, sweeping the week, going to combine 4-0. That's my bank on it.
Corey, you want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
I'll let you go first because I got
sure?
a big one to come out on. Oh, yeah.
You sure? Because I'm sure we're probably going to have the same one. At least same game.
Yep.
Saturday night, Indiana versus Purdue. Indiana takes down Purdue is what you want me to say. But I'm not doing it. I ain't doing it. I am sorry. I like this Purdue team. They're getting revenge from last year's game. Purdue goes into Assembly Hall and takes down your Hoosiers. The Boilermakers, bowler up, baby. Purdue knocks down IU. Bank on it.
Corey, what a swerve that was. He got y'all hyped up dancing and then cut the rug out from under you.
The typical Peyton, he's like a hurricane. He leads with excitement and ends in disaster. Just like both of his favorite teams. All right, bank on it. Purdue against Penn State. Penn State hits 13 plus threes in that game. Bank on it. And bank on it on Saturday. Indiana wins by 8+.
I like it, dude. I can't wait for that
8+.
game, and I can't wait to preview that game.
Just because I've been down in a few games or a few weeks of bank on it, I'm going to go for a three-peat this week. A little parlay action. Trace Jackson Davis outscores Zach Edey.
I don't see where those three are crazy. Honest to God, I don't. I can't wait to preview this Indiana Purdue game during the midweek show, because once we get in depth and go by the numbers and analytics, that's going to be exciting. Cannot wait for that. Can't believe none of us talked about the Duke Carolina game. It doesn't feel that special this year. Honest to God.
What happened to the best rivalry in college basketball history? Come on, Phil. Like, what happened to it?
You just said it. The best rivalry is Indiana Purdue. That is number one. We're already talking about it. That's all there needs to be.
Well, hey, trust me, we'll talk Duke Carolina in the midweek show, but I'm just saying on the surface, it doesn't feel special this year. Maybe it's because Duke's not good. Whatever the case, we'll get into it in the midweek on episode 134. But let's round this thing out with shout-outs. I've got a couple. Shout out our guys from Bellarmine. Garrett Tipton hits a game winner the other night against Eastern Kentucky. Great stuff from Coach Davenport's ball club. If you haven't seen it, Tipton just buries one and beats Eastern Kentucky. Great win for our guys down in Bellarmine. Got to give a shout out to Kason Wallace. I thought he played well as I do Jalen Wilson. I thought both of them combined for really good games on opposite ends of the spectrum last night. And then I want to give a shout out to a SEC team because he has been red hot as well. It was really kind of unexpected, but TCU loses to Mississippi State. Mississippi State gets a key quad one victory over a really good TCU team and was one of only 3 SEC wins during the challenge. But good Coach Jan's team to get a big marquee win to keep any hopes of the NCAA tournament alive. So those are my shout outs. Good on Mississippi State. That was a big win.
Go ahead.
One of you guys go next?
Yeah, I'm going to shout out Coach Terry Moran from Indiana. Huge accomplishment of being the all-time winningest coach in IU history on the women's side, and also picking up the huge marquee win over number 2 Ohio State. Just overall the excitement around women's basketball in Indiana is growing. Also shout out to overall the fans. I mean, I know it's kind of a little bit on falling on that, but Indiana fans set the all-time highest attendance record at 10,455 in Assembly Hall when in that game, and it was just as loud as what it is for any men's game. The overall fan support and everything like that is just huge. So that's pretty exciting. But both of my shout outs are there for the women's side this week.
3 shout outs this week. First one, let's start off with this. Shout out, and his last name's a little bit weird, so if I mispronounce your last name, apologies to you. But Sienna's Michael Bear. Over the weekend, he lost his dad to cancer, and on the coaches versus cancer night against Iona, he had the biggest game of his career. He had 18 points, 12 rebounds, and a big-time victory over Iona with MAC implications, first place implications on the line. 18 points, 12 rebounds, and coming into this game, he only averaged 3.8 points per game. So on the night that it was coaches versus cancer night, and he lost his dad to cancer on the weekend. Hats off to you, man. Post-game press conference, he was emotional, obviously, as you expected. Hats off to you. Big-time performance by you.
That's good stuff, man. That's what makes you believe in that somebody's watching out over you. That's good stuff.
I guess I got a pair here that's going to combine into one shout out. Shout out to the Oklahoma basketball organization, not just for men's but also women's too, and I'll get to that in a minute. But the men's team, obviously we talked about earlier, knocking off in our rankings the number 1 team in the country in Alabama. Not just knocking them off, they beat their ass. I forgot what the final score was, like 89 or what, 83 to 69.
69.
Yeah,
that's what it was. 93-69. Beat their ass in the number 1 team on our ECB rankings that we do every week. So shout out to the men's team for that. And going to the women's side, ladies and gentlemen, we seen a record get broke this week. Taylor Robinson from Oklahoma women's team has broke the NCAA women's basketball record for the most career three-pointers made, with 498 three-pointers made from behind the arc. Shout out to her, incredible accomplishment. She got to do it at Oklahoma too, so it's on the road, so it was a big time accomplishment from her. So shout out to her for that one. And my last shout out to ECB poll voter Matt Sack. He had the sign of the week. UK Sack is better than Kansas dick. Well, guess what? You were wrong, because Kansas dick was better than your sack, or Kentucky Sack. Kansas knocks off Kentucky Saturday night. And all I got to say about that, like one of my old friend Dylan growing up, his first PS3 gamer tag, just like his first 3 gamer tag has said, eat my sack, Matt. All right? Go Kansas. Rock chalk. Great sign, though. And incredible. Shout out to all of them.
Great stuff, fellas, today, as always. I'm trying to put the right words here. We didn't even mention in years past. I still remember because earlier in the week on Thursday, we had women's Connecticut versus women's Tennessee. And that used to be one of the biggest games in college basketball, period, that nobody really cares about anymore, which is super sad. But I can't wait till we get to midweek to discuss Indiana, Purdue, to discuss Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, Florida, and everything else. To recap happened in the Kansas State rematch, Texas, Baylor, all of it. But until episode 134, I hope you guys don't fall on black days. We will catch you on episode 134 midweek. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And until then, we will catch you down the road.